What would you say if I told you that smoking, or even more accurately, the difficulty that many people have when they're quitting smoking, is actually a belief problem? It's a belief problem much more than it is a chemical problem. I'm Todd Goodwin, and as a hypnotist for nearly 10 years, smoking cessation has been one of the things that I've worked to help clients accomplish, to break free of the emotional control that smoking has. Now, of course, if you ask most physicians or the average person on the street, is smoking addictive? They'll say, of course, it's addictive. Nicotine is more addictive than cocaine, or it's highly addictive, and all of this. Well, here's the reality. Nicotine does have an action on the brain, and it does, for many people, hook them very quickly into the behavior of smoking at a very early age. However, what I can tell you, having seen well over 1,000 people and helped the vast majority of them to quit smoking through hypnosis, I can tell you that smoking is primarily mental. The physical part is a very small part of it, and the truth is, smoking is an emotionally compulsive habit. And if you want to call it addictive, then we'll call the behavior psychologically addictive, for sure. Now, when I said in the beginning that this is a belief problem, it means that in order for you to feel an urge or a craving, an emotional stress associated with a particular behavior like smoking, there has to be a certain thought that precedes it. So, real quick lesson here on how the behavior of smoking is triggered within a given day. Now, let's start at the top. You have a behavior. That is a symptom. And usually an unhealthy, say, compulsive behavior is a way to alleviate emotional and physical discomfort. So if you think of 4 levels here, the superficial level is the behavior itself, smoking. The physiological level is right below that, and the emotional level is below that. And below that is the thought level. I'll get to that in a minute. So, in order for someone to engage in a behavior that they logically know is bad for them in a whole host of ways, like smoking. Smoking is extremely irrational, and yet people who smoke, even though they say they want to quit, and even if they don't say that, everyone who smokes knows it's bad for a variety of reasons. They're still doing it. So anytime that happens, there has to be some emotional discomfort, whether they're aware of it or not, or physical discomfort that's causing them to smoke. So, let's look at it this way. Think of someone right before they're about to have a cigarette, right before they have that urge. Well, there's an emotional desire, or you could look at the flip side, and there's an emotional discomfort associated with being without the object that they feel they need. So, there's this emotional discomfort, stress, yucky feeling, whatever you want to call it, craving, urge, and that creates physical discomfort. Very similar to a fight or flight response. If you feel stressed about something, or agitated, or anxious, or uncomfortable, there's going to be an increase in adrenaline, a stress hormone, that's going to affect the physiology in some way. That emotional and physical discomfort leads our subconscious mind, the habitual emotional part of us, that's irrational, to come up with a solution. And so if you're feeling uncomfortable emotionally and or physically, your subconscious is going to try to help you feel better in the short run, without regard to the long-term consequences, because that's not its job. And so if you have learned that smoking makes you feel better, not necessarily makes you feel good, but makes you feel less uncomfortable, then that urge to smoke will be there, and then the behavior temporarily takes away that discomfort. And that means success. And that means that it's a good behavior in the short term because it helps you get out of the emotional and physical discomfort. So let's look at this more deeply. What's causing the emotional and physical discomfort? Now, is it true that the breakdown of nicotine and the excretion of nicotine from the blood can actually cause physical withdrawal symptoms? In some cases, yes. I'm not going to get into it right now, but most symptoms of nicotine withdrawal have very little to do with nicotine and have everything to do with dietary factors. I'll save that for another video. So for now, let's just say that most of the discomfort someone feels is actually psychologically based and not physically based. Remember, smoking is mostly mental, as is quitting smoking. So if there's a behavior to remove a discomfort, and then there's a physical and underlying that emotional discomfort, what is the thought that's causing the emotional discomfort? All right, here it is. This is the belief. The belief is, I need to smoke in order to reduce stress, in order to feel good. I need to smoke in order to be okay. At the same time, there may be a belief. If I quit smoking, it's going to be painful, difficult, uncomfortable in some way. Now, those beliefs, any one of those, is enough to make it hard for someone to quit smoking, and it's enough to keep the person to continue to reach for a cigarette. Why? Because if you believe, based on a thought, that you need something, then the absence of that thing is going to create fear. Obviously, this is the case with food, or if we're a child and we have this belief that we need our parents because we're dependent, and if we're 5 years old and we're lost in a store and our parent is nowhere to be found, we're going to start crying out of fear that we've lost the thing we know we need. So are we really children who are counting on the cigarette to be our parent? Counting on that cigarette to be something to satisfy us because we're dependent on it. No one is physically dependent on a cigarette, but emotionally dependent, yes. And so, if you have a belief that you need to have a cigarette, or that not having a cigarette is going to create discomfort or hassle for you, then the emotion is fear that comes, the fear of being without it. And that drives us, through emotional and physical discomfort, that drives us to find it at all costs. And then once we do it, we feel a little better, and that confirms the incorrect belief that we actually need to smoke. So when people try to quit smoking and they don't change that underlying belief, failure is pretty much inevitable. And that's the reason why most attempts to quit smoking through no help, but by cold turkey, 95% of people who try to quit smoking like that, or 95% of attempts, fail. And in fact, well over 90% of nicotine replacement attempts fail as well. So the truth is, if you're not changing your thoughts, then you can't change the emotion. And if you don't change the emotion, then you have very little hope to change that behavior, no matter how good your willpower is. So quitting smoking is based, and the success of that is based on your beliefs and how you respond emotionally. Change your thoughts, change your feelings, break that habit. It's that simple.